Did you have a break? You need a break to refresh your brain and get ready for the next part of this lecture. Next, I'm going to talk about biodiversity loss and different ways to present this in maps, graphs, figures. The context of this biodiversity loss is going to be land use changes. Human behavior is causing a massive biodiversity decline all over the world, primarily by deforestation and land clearing for agriculture. So in Australia, agricultural land clearing has been the main cause of biodiversity loss. Since the Europeans came to Australia, about 100 million hectares of forest and woodland areas have been cleared, mostly for agricultural purposes. And with the loss in forest and woodland areas, we lose ecosystems, we lose species, we lose a lot of biodiversity. So the first way to present this land clearing will be in maps. So what I want you to be able to do after this lecture and after this unit is look at maps and be able to interpret them. So look at the title of the map and the legend to see what you're looking at. So the next couple of maps I've sourced from the State of the Environment Report 2016, and it has a section on land clearing. And this first map shows you a change in forested area. So this is a change. So a positive number would be an increase in forested area, and a negative number is a decrease. And what do you see? Well, first of all, most of the areas on this map are grayish, which means not that much change. There's only 4 areas that are green with a positive change. There is a lot more brown, pink and red, which indicate a negative change. So those are all areas that have been cleared of forest and woodlands. Not a very positive picture. This next map shows again a proportion, and in this case a loss in native communities. So what does a negative number mean here? A negative loss, is that a positive thing or a negative thing? It's a positive thing. A negative loss means a gain. So you can see that the dark blue in this map is a gain in native communities. Well, there are not that many spots. There's a bit here, there is a bit here, and there's a bit here that have experienced a gain in native communities. Most areas in Australia have been experiencing a loss. So in particular, all those orange parts, you can see even red spots here all along the east coast, have been experiencing a loss in communities. The same here in WA, that whole ecoregion has experienced up to 50% loss in native communities. So it's not a very positive picture again. And you see that most loss has been occurring along the coast where most people live. Those are maps to present biodiversity loss. I'm now going to show you ways to present it in graphs. So what I've done is, instead of looking at Australian data, I've looked at global data. and I've looked at how much forested area is left in the world. That is, how much land is left that has natural or planted trees on that land. And I'm going to test the hypothesis that about 40% of all land in the world is under forest. And you can do that testing, first of all visually, and then through a t-test. So I've gone to a global database of forested land and presented those in histograms. So these are, I don't quite remember whether these are plots or countries with different proportions of forests. So what you see here is that more than about 43% of these countries have less than 10% forest left. You can see that there is indeed a bit of a spike at 40. We can't say whether that's the mean or not. What you can definitely see is that forested area is going down. The frequency of high forested proportion is much lower. So there's only about 4%. Where is my mouse? Yep, there's only about 4% of countries that have between 90 and 100% forest. And that's understandable, because we need a place to live too. So that's a bin width of 10. 0 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30, etc. Now what I want to show you is how the detail of this information changes when you change the bin width, which you will have discussed in the statistics section. So that's with 9. You still see that the 0 is the highest, and then the 40%, it's actually no longer 40%. So already changing the bin has changed our information. Then the second highest is now under 40. But then if I change the bin width again, yeah, you see it's still that between 30 odd and 40. So I'll walk through that. Bin width of 7, 6, 5. Oh, you're starting to see something interesting here now. There's a little spike here of countries with a high proportion of forest. And there continues to be a spike in this area here. So I can see now that it's not actually between 30 and 40, but it's between 30 and 35. Okay, let's continue. Bin width of 4, 3, 2, and 1. So each individual percentage. You have a lot more detail in histograms with a smaller bin width. But is that the best way to present the data? So this is where experience and also just looking at the visual graph comes in. How much extra information do we gain from changing the bin width? I'd probably be inclined to go with a bin width of 5 here, because it gives a nice width that goes from, that stops at a whole number, the whole 20, the whole 40. But it gives me enough detail to see that there is a spike between 30 and 35. Anyway, different ways to present data. How interesting. So this is a bin width of 6.5. And what I want to do with this is to test whether my hypothesis that 40% of the world's landmass is in forest is true or not. And when I look at this graph, I calculate first where's my mouse again? I calculate the sample mean, which is 32, and the deviation, which is 24. But I hypothesized that the value was 40. And what I now need to do is test whether this 40 and this 32 are significantly different from each other. That might sound a bit strange. Are 23 and 40 the same or different? How can they ever be the same? Well, if this standard deviation is big enough, then maybe there's no meaningful difference between 32 and 40. And in statistical terms, no meaningful difference means no statistical difference. And we're going to test that with a t-test after the break.